Hi, my name is Ashley, and you're watching Visions for a Child's Heart.
Heavenly mothers crying, seas of children are dying at the hands of the other child. I know her heart is breaking, feel the earth is shaking, but rivers flow from the tears she cries. She cries, she cries. See Rachel's weeping for her children. Rachel's weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just end?
Hi, this is Miss E, and welcome to Visions for a Child's Heart. As I always say, we have a special guest, and we have a special show today. And I have often talked about, the village that raises a child. But then what happens when that child becomes the village? And I often tease my young people and say, okay, I've raised you, now you've got to take care of me. But our guest today, not only was she a child in the village and grown up in the foster care system, she now literally is the village because she herself has opened her home and her heart and become a foster parent. So I want to welcome Miss Ashley Green.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be on your show.
I'm glad to have you. And actually, I was really surprised when I got your email. And I never even asked you this. Did you see my response, my little call out on Facebook?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I never know who I'm talking to or where they're from, and I was just so pleased to find out that you're close enough to get here because I'm talking about doing a radio program. And we can still do that. But it was so nice that you are nearby. You're in Sacramento, and we're in Vallejo, California. And so it's about an hour's drive. So I thank you for taking the drive. Yes, yes, yes. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. When did you go into care? How long were you in care?
Okay, so I went into foster care when I was 11, and I stayed in the system until I graduated from high school at 18.
Wow, okay. And how many homes were you in during that time?
I would say a total of about 7 or 8.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. So that averaged probably about 2 a year?
Well, if you break it down like that, but the most moving I did was in that first year.
Really?
And then after that, the remainder of the time was in one placement.
Okay. So what happened during that first year or so that caused a lot of moves?
It was, originally I was intended to go back home, so it was the process of visitation and all the stuff leading up to, moving back into my biological parents' home.
Okay.
But then the situation changed, and I became a permanent fixture in the system.
Wow.
So that also kind of changed where I could stay, because some placements are short-term placement,
Mm-hmm.
and once they determined that I needed a long-term home, that's when I continued to move around till I could find that.
A brief question, because when you talk about that, I have my own personal feelings about a child being a permanent foster care, because foster care, a child in permanent foster care, because to me, foster care isn't supposed to be permanent.
Yeah.
So were your parents' rights terminated?
Well, one of my parents was deceased,
Okay.
and the other one went into prison. And at that point, that's when they determined that I was going to be in the system. So
Wow. Okay. Did they ever talk about adoption?
there's a certain age that majority of people like. Younger, I was almost a teenager, so.
But were you open to it?
I
Or
was
did anyone mention it to you?
Nobody ever mentioned that to me. That was never
Okay.
an option.
See,
for
that's
me.
another program. That's another program because I used to be an adoption social worker,
Okay.
and my whole caseload were sibling groups and older children.
Okay.
And yeah, and I talk about that in my book. That one of the kids who was 14, and the person said he was in a group home, and you know how you have to have the monthly visits. And so this month, since it was way out of town, the social worker went and she said, well, Evelyn said she's looking for a home for you, but don't get your hopes up too high. And that just angered me. And I said, if it's the last thing I do before I leave, this child is going to get home. And that was the last thing I did. I got him placed with a single dad who had also adopted another child. So I just think it's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, some teenagers are just not open to it, but some people do want to have that permanency and want a family, because you never outgrow that need.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
then another thing that did bother me is it was me, 11, my brother, 13, and my sister was 16 at the time.
Mhm.
They put us all in separate counties.
Mm.
You know, not even the same home, same city, different counties.
Wow.
And when I speak to workers today, they can never figure out how that happened.
Mm.
And it permanently hindered our relationships with each other.
Amazing.
Because I went that first year, I went maybe about a year without seeing my brother. And I don't know how that happened, but
Okay.
yeah.
And see, that's another conversation about the sibling relationships and how you need those relationships, because when you age out, the system isn't there. You
Right.
still need family.
Yeah.
Wow. It's okay. So you're gonna have to come back. We're gonna have to have several conversations. So, what was the most memorable experience that you had in terms of a foster parent?
Okay, most memorable. That's a tough one. One thing I have to commend is that the home that I ended up remaining at, they tried in their best abilities to treat me as family.
Mhm.
And you know, I was a rough kid to deal with. Like I was very introverted.
Mhm.
I was scared of socialization. I was suicidal. I had a lot of problems. So for them to deal with that, I will always, you know, have a place in my heart for the people that did that. But you know, they did a lot of stuff that was frowned on. You know, as far as agencies and the system is concerned. But they gave me that stability
Okay.
to the best of their
So they hung in there. with
yeah,
you.
because I'm still in contact with them now, and I've been out of the system maybe like 8 years.
Okay.
So
Did you go to therapy at all when you were?
I went to therapy, but it was such a short period of time. It was just when I was really young. I just always remember drinking the grape juice and the crackers and playing Uno.
That sounds like communion to me.
It does. So I don't remember getting too much out of it.
Wow. Well, it's my kids. Know you get more than grape juice and crackers. And they come in and say, "What you got, E, Miss E?" Yes, I always keep things.
And it does depend on the therapist. I had one therapist that left her job and she was really helping me. But after that, you know, it kind of just depends on the therapist. And for all I know, they kept a really good record and they were making progress without me knowing it.
Because they were meeting their own goals and needs.
So
Yeah, it was for them, not for
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but just being able to talk to people, and you know, I would talk to people a lot about my situation, albeit sometimes I'll talk to the wrong people, and it would kind of come back to haunt me.
Okay.
But you know, I was definitely outspoken about it, and I would try not to hide anything because I felt that was a way to vent.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So that was the most memorable. What was the most favorite?
favorite moment? in
Your
a
favorite foster home? Your foster parent?
I would have to say it wasn't the ones that I ended up staying with.
Wow.
It wasn't. I stayed there 7 years, but it was a struggle. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. Like I just couldn't wait until I graduated, went on to college. You know.
So what was it, at what point did you decide, I'm going to be a foster parent?
Okay. Maybe within a year after I graduated college.
Wow.
So it was I always, when I was in, even in elementary school, I was helping smaller age children. And by the time I got to high school, I ended up being in about 14 different clubs on campus.
Wow. And so you were no longer an introvert at that point, right?
Yeah, because, well, okay, have you, maybe I'm not saying the terminology or the slogan properly, but sometimes you don't get what you want, you get what you need.
Okay.
So I needed to be where I was at.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I was, by the time, in high school, I did kind of really branch out and try to get involved in as much as possible. And when I was working on my bachelor's, I wasn't able to. We had little things on campus, but I was so busy with schoolwork itself and my own little life issues. So after I graduated, then I kind of wanted to do something with kids. I want to do something. I didn't know that I'd be a foster parent.
Okay. I'm just curious, where did you go to school? What was your major?
Okay, so bachelor's in interior design and Fresno State.
Right.
Yeah, and now I'm working on my master's in interior architecture and design and Academy Art University in San Francisco.
I love it. Oh yeah, we definitely have to talk some more. That's part of the whole big vision. So, the moment you decided that you were going to be a foster parent, what was it that caused you to make that call and go to that orientation?
I decided to go with what I knew. So I went to an older agency, the one that I actually grew up with, and they weren't the popular one. You go in their office, it doesn't have clean paint, and it's not perfect at all, but it's home. So that's why I decided to go with them, and I was scared just because I've seen a lot. I've seen, because in my foster home, during that 7 years, there must have been about 40 kids that came and went through there. And in addition to that, like, my foster family's relatives had different foster homes. So I was surrounded by foster kids, even when I was just within that foster family. So some of the things that went on, some of the things that the kids were exposed to, coming into the home, some of the behaviors were just sick. So it was scary. So one thing that I was very fearful of is subjecting my son to any of that behavior. So that was, and people were telling me, wait till he's older, but I went ahead and did it, and it's been rough, but it's working. So
you say you were afraid, but what was it that just said, I'm going to do it? What was it? What was the driving force, the motivation?
Because my background, I think that really scared foster parents, and I didn't want to be afraid of what people are saying about a child. Regardless of their backgrounds, I wanted to try. I wanted to just see how things could go. So
it's interesting because I know two young ladies, one who's recently become a foster parent and another is actually doing a home study to become an adoptive parent. And we talked about how much of her growing up that she wanted to disclose because she did not want the social workers who were going to make a decision whether she was a good parent to determine or to say, well, you've been through a traumatic experience and wanting her to go to therapy and all of that. And it really created some anxiety for her. It's like, okay, how much do I say? Because on one hand, this is my strength, that I've been there, so I can work with these young people. I can have a better chance of understanding. But if I have someone labeling me and putting me in a box and say, well, because you've had this experience, you might not be good enough.
That was something that I dealt with too.
Okay.
But during the interview, they asked me everything.
Okay.
One of the positive aspects of that was the fact that some of the people knew me, remembered me from when I was a kid.
Okay.
So that was a bonus for going with somebody that I grew up with.
Okay.
Had it been total strangers, they could have seriously judged me and really felt that I couldn't possibly have been fit, just basically judging me on that past. So yeah, I was definitely a little bit paranoid about that one too, because I didn't hide anything. But they understood.
Right.
So
how long was the process for becoming licensed for you?
It took me about 3.5, 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And how long after you were licensed was a child placed in your home?
Another 2 months.
Okay, so it's about half a year, the whole process. Did you expect it? Was that the timing that you expected, or did you?
I expected it to happen sooner, but I just had to wait.
So based on your experience with some sort of okay and not okay foster homes, what are some of the things that you've determined within yourself that you would do or never do based on your experience with the other foster parents?
I feel like there's certain terminology, there's certain verbiage that is just strictly forbidden around the kids, I really try my best not to differentiate between mine and my foster kids. Because that's something that I always dealt with, even in the one that I ended up staying at the longest. Because there were certain members of the family that weren't on the same page
Weren't
as
receptive.
my foster mother. So I had one relative that literally was treating her dog better than she was treating us. Like if we were foster kids, like you could tell, like the difference. And so I really try not to do that. So and just also some of the language is not acceptable.
Share something else, because that's the reason why I do this program, so people can learn. I want to be specific because as a social worker, as a therapist, also as a foster and adoptive parent myself, I've seen and heard things that just make me cringe. And some of it happened even within my own family. So that whole thing about this is her foster son, this is my child, it's like, this is my child. This is my child. And other people don't embrace it maybe like you do if your heart is there. And that's why we talk about the whole village needs to be educated and informed. The churches, the schools, everyone, because someone is like, well, this isn't your child, is it?
Right.
I'm like, he's with me, isn't he? I become very defensive, and I was very protective, I said, of my boys. It was a little different when I had my foster daughters who are a different ethnicity, but we talked about how are we going to deal with this, and so we just said, I'm your godmother. But the little one, she didn't know any different, and she walked out, she said, hi, Mommy, she jumped up, and people looked at her, and she put her eyes on me. But even to this day, she's grown with her own child, she calls me her godmom. And I think just that sense of connectedness and knowing what your role is and what the relationship is, to be able to define it, because there's a lot of shame that a lot of foster children carry, and they might call someone auntie, grandma, or whatever, but it's just for the sake, they might even feel that close to them, but they say that for the sake of other people not looking in and questioning the relationship.
Right. Well, with me, with my foster son that I had for a year, that I told you about over the phone, I did have some issues with him just because him and my son are so close in age, but he was Caucasian. Okay. So people would look at me like I'm crazy. Like, what were you doing around that time? Like, that's the type of looks that I kept getting, And he called me mom because he that's all he knew, because he was in a phase where he was did a lot of mimicking.
So everything your son said,
he would repeat. So he latched on to the fact that my son calls me mommy quickly. So I would go into places and people would do like double takes, like, wait a minute, like those are both your kids, like But some people, they were thinking, okay, maybe they're twins, but they just look a lot different, which is the case.
It's possible.
So, but I've had to deal with that before too.
Wow. So what's been the most difficult part of foster parenting?
I'm kind of at a standstill between two things. Dealing with my foster son, because he had so many behavioral issues that nobody seemed to be able to recognize or want to be able to recognize. And also dealing with the system itself. Because when I was informed that he would be leaving, I was trying to battle them because the county worker had no just cause. And it seems like there was really nothing I could do.
They're just jerking them around like they're just,
Because he threw horrible tantrums, and, he would scream and just no, and throw his cereal off the table, and, act like he couldn't do anything when he can. Like, he had problems, a lot of problems. But
you were willing to hang in there with him.
I was trying my best. Like, he was stressful. He was really, really stressful. So, and that was the first child they gave me.
Okay.
I had him and his older sister, I couldn't deal with her behavior. And,
Now, did you see any of yourself in her? Did it make you think about some of the foster parents you had and the decisions that were made?
In my foster son's older sister? In her, no. In my current one, yes.
Okay.
Because she had a lot of behavioral problems, and she had a mother that was constantly telling her, if you act up, you're going to come back home. So, that's what her mother was telling her. So,
okay.
Yeah, but she's dealing with some things on her own.
And I think I mentioned to you one of the things with your being so young and really being closer in age to your teen foster children. than most people are, that could be a benefit, and it could also be a challenge.
Yes.
Okay.
The most challenging is when things aren't fun. When I'm trying to maybe instill values. It's always fun to like go shopping and just joke around. But when things get serious, that's when it does be an issue. That it's such a close age.
Right, because it's almost like you're a big sister
Yeah.
than a parent figure.
That's kind of the role that
Okay.
like I'm a big sister that defends or
Okay.
something.
Well, actually, she is here in the studio. She can't come on camera, but I know she's listening to all of this. I'm just wondering what input that she will have when we take a break. And I'm glad that you're here. And I'm actually saying something to you because I'm very sensitive to someone being in the room and people talking. That happens a lot in situations. A child is sitting there, or a young person, and people are talking about everything like they're just a piece of
Yes.
furniture. And so that's important to me. So I definitely want your feedback. What's the fun part about being a foster parent?
It's not a job. That's what's fun about it. Like, it's really not. Like, if I could just have me and my kids, whoever my kids are at that time, and we could just go have fun all the time, that would be the life.
Okay.
It's not a job. That's the part. I like that this occupation is not an occupation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle.
Yes.
And if most people looked at it that way rather than as a business,
Right.
That is a real big one for me. But we're going to come back and share some things. Actually, the young lady that I interviewed for our radio program last night is a foster parent, and we talked about certain things that someone was in my home was listening to the interview, and she said, "Oh, I just couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because why do these people become foster parents if they don't like kids in the first place?" She said, "Oh, I would just turn the whole system out."
Yeah.
And I was glad to hear that response because that's what the community needs to hear. That's not what they need to hear, but they need to be aware of all of the situations that goes on with the child and how still, as not as a foster parent, whatever role that we're playing, we all can still do something. And as I say, special for a child's heart. And that's why I named my organization that, because we all have a role for touching each other's hearts. So as we get ready to close out, is there anything that you would maybe like to say to foster parents, but anything you'd like to say to youth? Or anyone, actually the other thing, any former foster youth who are considering becoming a foster parent, what would you say?
I will probably say that it's challenging. If you're looking for an easy path, don't do it because it wouldn't be worth it. Especially if somebody was just focused on the finances, it's definitely not working. Just get a 9 to 5. But if you're passionate about children and really trying to make a difference, being a foster parent would be something for you, but don't expect it to be a walk in the park, ever. And as far as former youth, from what I've seen, we've had to struggle far more than people that have, maybe a rich family, stable parents. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in regards to people that are currently in the system, I just find whatever person in your life is trying to help you, if at all there is one, I would say cling to them and allow them to be your mentor and take heed to any advice that they have to give to you. Because, whether they're going to be in your life or not, if they're a positive influence for that time, that might be exactly what you need for this point in your life until you can make it to the next phase. So.
Wonderful words of wisdom and advice. So, we hope you've enjoyed this interview with Ms. Ashley Grieve. And you can contact us at visions@forachildsheart.org. You can visit our website, www.forachildsheart.org. And let us know what you think about this topic. And we're going to come back in another segment, which you might see today or another day, with Ms. Ashley Grieve. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Heavenly mothers crying, seas of children are dying at the hands of the other child. Though her heart is breaking, feel the earth it's shaking. But rivers flow from the tears she cries. She cries, she cries. See Rachel's weeping for her children. Rachel's weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just